Welcome to The Shield Within. The issues discussed on the Shield Within podcast do not reflect the opinions of any specific agency. They are the views of the host and the guest. Any persons discussed may be fictional for comedic purposes only. This podcast is rated explicit and listener discretion is advised. Listening to The Shield Within may trigger repressed or suppressed memories or experiences. Please contact a mental health professional at your earliest convenience. It's time for the chaos to cease.
Time to open yourself to peace.
From the hours you've put in.
To the next shift you begin.
From the endless pursuit of release.
That finds the worst unleashed.
Transform the ugly into a win.
Get to know your shield within.
Welcome to the Shield Within.
Welcome, Mark.
I know you've all been on the edge of your chair waiting for this episode to come up. So we publish on the 1st of the month and the 15th of the month. So we're going to kind of sneak one in. But this is the part 2 of our talk with Melanie Palmer. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
We're
Still.
Right. Dragging on, isn't it? We have...
what time is it?
Sainted... Time for you to shut the fuck up. Now, see, Melanie's our new best friend.
Yeah.
We also have Sainted Susan at the table. We got to Dr. David sitting here. Mm-hmm. We kind of touched off at the last episode about first responder wellness.
Right.
And I pulled out my soapbox and started doing a little fucking preaching about reaching out to first responders. So I want to dive into that just head first. But first, we have to do some plugs here. So go out to Facebook, Facebook /Shield Within. Hit like, hit follow. We're trying to get up our Facebook followers to 1,000 followers this year. That's our goal. We're almost there. We're almost there. Or go out if you want to see our smiling faces or the original Hedgehog Donnie. Go to www.shieldwithin.com. You can cast your, it's up there on top. My wife's looking for a hedgehog. Theshieldwithin.com. You can see all of our smiling faces. Or Patreon. If you got that extra $5 laying around a month, that's what it's going to cost you to support the show. Go to Patreon /theshieldwithin and sign up and help us take care of things. Help us take care of you.
That's right. That's
Help
the
us
idea.
spread the word.
Yeah, spread the word like Thunderbird.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the end of last show, we started getting into, so you're a member of FOP and ICP, right?
So I am a vetted clinician through FOP, and then I'm a member of IACP.
Right. So you do that so you can get all the inside track.
That's exactly why, yeah. And discounted at the conferences and all that good stuff.
So do you go to the IACP conference or do you
I go to they have a couple different ones throughout the year, and I go to the wellness and safety one.
Okay. Is it well attended?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of the chiefs coming in there because that's a big thing right now is officer wellness. I think we're still killing ourselves at a horrid rate.
Right.
Thank God I was managed to walk through that minefield and kept myself alive. David's the reason why I'm still here.
Right.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is. I'm very grateful for him. I'm also very grateful to be sharing a microphone with him and to share this fucking nightmare that I went through. So we're talking about resources. So you go to the National FOP,
right.
so FOP.org, and you go to wellness. And there's a whole list of clinicians there. And what I was bitching about or talking about that the last episode was the fact that I feel that officer wellness, because of the stigma, it isn't taken serious. And, we have our good friend Steve Click, who's doing some wonderful work here in the state of Ohio. But what I talked about after we'd had him on, which is a great episode, was that how are we marketing that? And you had talked about the last... On the last episodes, if you're having a positive experience with a clinician or you're getting some results, goddamn, go fucking talk about it.
Or any mental health resource. I mean, anything that's going to be helpful and is working for you,
Right.
Let somebody know.
Yeah.
Right. So you're an EMDR therapist.
Yeah.
For the people that's just clicking on this and not working their way through it, as you should be working your way through the catalog. But some people start the oldest and work their way backwards. I think we're not doing as a society for our first responders and I'm always police first, fire second, you know, and then down the line. But we all have our own trauma. You know, last month we worked with Ricardo with Within the Trenches podcast. I don't know if you've listened to them, and you know the amount of fucked up shit that, because the dispatchers get the call first,
right?
You know, and on down the line,
right?
But with the cops, you know, we don't. What am I trying to say? We meaning I, at the time, it was stigmatized, and flat out heard it right from the corner office. If you go to therapy, you're fucking weak.
I mean, that's still alive and well today.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to take 25 years to change the culture. You know, you bunch of pussies, what's wrong with you? Just go home and sleep it off. Well, you don't do that, especially if you don't sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, PTSD.
Yeah.
You know, and we have a little group chat amongst our people that are on the Shield Within, and I'm forbidden from texting before 7 a.m. What time do I get up, honey?
About 4:30.
4:30. Yeah, thanks, fucking PTSD. But, you know, it doesn't matter how late I go to bed. I'm always wide awake at 4:30. You know, so I just ramble around the house. So sleeping is a problem, you know, and that's like when we talked with Dr. Molly Hall and we had her on. What's the first thing you do with your first responders? I got to get them to sleep.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You know, so if you're not sleeping, and I hear these guys all the time because I'm still an advanced trainer, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Well, let me tell you something about that, bro.
That's coming sooner.
There you go.
Because you're not sleeping.
Melanie. Bam, yeah, that's going to be happening sooner than later. It's bad enough we already die 10 years before everybody else because of the amount of stress we have.
That's
and now you're fucking compounding it. Remember, boys and girls, it's just a job. And I get so, I don't want to say upset when I see the memes on social media. It's a calling. What is a calling? It really is, and it's great to be passionate about it, but have good work-life balance.
That's difficult.
Oh, I know.
That's very difficult.
Right, Susan? How many times I left your ass sitting here alone?
But it's not just the first responder and what's going on with them internally and what they're thinking and what their calling was and how they got to it. It's a whole world that reinforces that. The whole world around you all reinforces that this is who you are.
Right.
And I've said this before, and I don't mean any disrespect. I like to expand a little bit about just how every first responders are called heroes. And yes, in my heart, yes, I believe, you know, that sentiment. However, there's a flip side to that coin of reinforcing hero, like in terms of like they don't have, you know, feelings, or they're going to go so far and they're going to do these heroic things, kind of reinforces that sense of like, you know, I can break down or not, and I don't mean broken, but I can break down. I have feelings and there's things that affect me and it's okay to be human and it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, so sometimes that external story and narrative reinforces already internally what's going on about I can't quote unquote show weakness because I'm a hero. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so it's not just that person. It's everybody around them 24/7 reinforcing that narrative, reinforcing it. It's so when you say have balance, and I'm not saying we shouldn't look and strive, but it's you know, if we could just tell people to have balance, wouldn't that be easy?
Well, you got to start somewhere. So it's like
have balance. Stop it. Have balance.
Well,
my job is done.
I was listening to when the tones drop, before the tones drop or something like that. I fucked it up. But anyway, they had on a firefighter. They're out of Cincinnati. You know the podcast I'm talking about? So trying to connect with them and maybe create some content. But they had a gentleman on, and he was talking about being at a line to death funeral for his friend, and he wasn't able to cry. He had no emotion. And I thought, bro, been there. I've so been there because I ran the honor guard here in Miami County for 16 years and going to line of duty death funerals and not feeling a fucking thing. People all around you sobbing everywhere. We did our first active duty death here in Miami County was with a retired Troy officer, and he was a bailiff, and then as a result, he had a catheter put in, heart cath, and he bled out. I mean, something went horribly wrong. You know, we did that, and I remember standing there and looking around, seeing everyone sobbing, and I had nothing. And And I'm like, there's something wrong here. I should be crying. I should be faking it at least. But, what is wrong here? Because, that was...
Or what's happened here.
Well, right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But, those are some clues when we need to start realizing, this isn't human anymore. I cry all the time now. I mean, Susan came home the other day.
It's so good for you.
No, because it's at the least opportune moment.
Yeah,
she was in Florida, and I was in here doing some work, and Chris Stapleton came on, and he did a duet with Patty Loveless. I was sobbing so hard. I called her. She's like, "What the fuck is wrong?" And I was like a little kid. she answers the phone, and I'm a fucking mess. Or it just clicks on. And she looked over at me the other day, and tears are just gushing out of my face, and I'm a blubbering mess. And she's like, "You good?" I'm like, "No," and it's like, what turns that on? I have no idea. It's just like suddenly God reaches down, hits the cry button or the rage button. Mm. That one's the one that's been fun here lately. It's like, I need to calm the fuck down because I'm ready to go, throttle the life out of this person. So it's like,
well, it just sounds like you're connected to a lot of emotion,
right?
And before you were not,
exactly,
you were cut off.
Exactly.
Which is, as you know, I'm sure you've all talked about it. It's protective, and that's what the brain does to help you deal with everything, and it builds up. And sometimes people get to the point where they're just completely shut off from emotion. But the suck thing, right, is you're cut off from all emotion. You don't get to pick,
right,
and that sucks. But it seems like it definitely happens gradually. And again, you have a culture that reinforces it. Mm-hmm. So, it's complex.
Yeah,
there's a lot going on, right?
Well, to get back to what we talked about, I guess I threw that out there, have that good work-life balance. When one of my officers, his name was Dan. Dan, if you're listening, hey, buddy. When he was done with work, he was done with work. Mm-hmm. Shut his cell phone off. That dude, I'm going home. Left everything at work where I would, I got dressed here. I mean, I would sleep in my uniform because I loved it so much, and have the radio on, and I'd be listening to it on time off, and
watching all the movies and all the shows,
and that's what I was
listening
getting ready
to all
to say,
the podcasts or audios back then, whenever.
Right, my favorite show was A Homicide Hunter, and I was just immersed in it. I just couldn't get enough, 24/7. But what we realize is that you can't keep that. Sometimes you gotta unplug from it, and that's where I was talking about having that good work-life balance. It's a job. And, have you heard of the terminology admin betrayal?
Yes.
Yes.
Of course.
And that's super, super devastating, especially when you have that. And that's where, cops start making bad decisions on the job because they have unresolved trauma that they're not dealing with.
Right.
So
it's coming out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's, like
coming out in these behaviors and things and bad decisions, and
and you can just see the pattern repeating, and it's kind of like, all right, chiefs, you see what the fuck's going on here. Why don't we have something in place? When we had Katie Healthcare on, Joe and Bill, yeah, I really loved it with the fact they said, don't wait for a crisis to create a plan.
Yes.
Right.
Well, we're reactive. That's
right. That's what first responders do. But, we have a policy with how to wear your name tag.
Right.
Why don't you have a fucking policy on what are you going to do when, Mark's, off the grid or whatever. It's and a lot of times what we talk about is like, where's your sergeant at? Your sergeant should be plugged into your people. Like, what's going on, dude? Oh, I'm having problems at home. Why are you having problems at home? What's going on here? We need to get you to a point of healing and wellness, and that's where we need, I think, early intervention on this stuff.
Early intervention.
Because
let's be proactive.
Well, right.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Imagine
that. Yeah, exactly. And then of course the second half of that is so stigmatized is that when I first started seeing David, nobody knew. I didn't tell a fucking soul. Right. And I paid cash. It's like, this shit ain't showing up on my goddamn insurance, audit.
Exactly.
So, he got paid cash. We did our appointments. I worked evening, so our appointment's usually 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon before I went to work. Kind of sit outside with the dark glasses and the hood on, looking around, making sure no one
sees you going in.
Right. Oh yeah, my biggest fear would be I'd be walking up that stairway and someone I knew came out. Fuck, what are you doing here? Well, yeah, it's kind of obvious, but in the early days when I first started getting into therapy, that's how it is, and there should be some anonymity. Did I say that right?
Absolutely.
I mean, if you want to go, go.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about it, talk about it. The biggest thing is go. Start the path, and nothing, I see guys all the time, friends with people that you're just watching them spinning their wheels in the mud. It's like, bro, come on. And I was that guy. For a long time. Just spinning the wheels in the mud and just not getting better. But, then where do you go? And thanks for that resource. Go to the FOP, hit the
Wellness Committee.
Wellness Committee, and there's first responder
vetted clinicians throughout the country.
Yeah.
Pick a state, pick a zip code, and go for it.
So,
and they're still they just started this initiative, right? It takes time. There's like 3 or 4 people. I don't know. I don't want to say wrong information, but there's a very small committee.
Right.
And they literally are meeting with these clinicians and going through that vetting process. So it takes time, and they just, it hasn't been long that they're doing it. So they're continuing to build that list and so it's going to take time,
Awesome.
But
So
they're doing it.
Yeah. So when was the last time you had a first responder come into your office and just stun you, shock you with? You don't have to say who.
What? Well,
it's kind of like
what do you mean by stun me or shock me?
Okay, so I had 2 guys that were involved in a shooting. Two of my friends, my colleagues that were officers, and their department was checkboxing.
Oh yeah,
we're going to send you to therapy. Wink. So they make an appointment with this fresh out of college kid, and these 2 veteran cops go rolling in there, and for 2 30-minute sessions, because each one of them got 30 minutes.
Because that's all they needed.
Oh yeah,
that's all you need.
So by the time the first one walked out the door, the therapist is sobbing in the corner because they're like,
I hear these stories. I'm kind of, to be honest, I'm sure they're telling the truth. I'm just kind of baffled.
Well, I'm getting this firsthand from
I absolutely believe the story. What I'm saying is, as a therapist,
how can that happen?
I've gotten over the other thing is my lived experience, right? So I'm not fresh out the gate, I'm not green, just with my own lived experience, right? But my different training, education, and then even professional history, and then all the different clients I've seen all over the years. You got my little funny story from before. But there's been a few times I've gotten teary-eyed with a client, because but sobbing and I'm kind of baffled. I mean, honestly, I'm like, how did they get to that point? Where they got through all the parts and then, or did they just feel this story or whatever they were told was just so horrific? And again, my references, I think I know it's different than other clinicians because of my lived experience, and just. So when you say, well, what do you mean? Because I've heard so many and then with the history of working with children and families and just the horrific shit, I don't know. So when you say that, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't,
Well,
nothing really,
I guess what
I've
I was
heard really
asking
bad,
you-
horrible shit.
Okay, but nothing
is, I'm trying to, has anything shocked me? Has anything shocked me?
Yeah, something that's like, you get done with the client and that you just can't get that.
There's been a couple things, and I tell my supervisees this: if you don't get bothered or touched, or something doesn't touch on you, I'm worried about you. At some point, because otherwise cool. you're not attuned, you're not connected in a way. You've got at least to do good work, I believe. There's got to be that attunement and that connection and that present sort of togetherness moments.
Very good.
And that's why I say to my supervisors, if you're just sitting there, with your clipboard, I mean, I think of how people think a therapist on a couch, like someone laying on a couch, I was going to say, no, I have had someone lay down once. But for the most part, they don't lay down on a couch, everybody.
Right.
But, what people think of as a therapist, sitting there, not even facing, the old Freud kind of thing, psychoanalytical, and that they're asking all these questions about childhood, which, of course we get there. But in terms of like a disconnect, to me, that there's therapists out there like that, and they subscribe to that kind of model. I'm the complete opposite of that. I self-disclose appropriately, and it's all about that attunement and that connection. And so again, if you're not having something that bothers you or touches on you as a clinician, at some point, I'm kind of questioning and wondering about the kind of work you're doing, because it's just like a robot. Do you know what I mean? Like,
so,
I don't know.
Yeah. So, and for the people since we're strictly audio for now, we're going to go video. Just trying to figure out how the fuck to set the cameras up in here. But,
you need some air up in here and some fans and
is it a little stuffy?
No, I'm just in general, because if you're gonna have a thing, and especially I want my hair going. I want.
Oh, got it. Yeah, kind of like a White Snake video. Got it. Yeah.
Right.
I'll get you on the hood of the Trans Am out here. We'll do a talk from there. Sorry, that's the MTC coming out. No.
Put him away.
All right.
I was gonna.
Go ahead.
Remind me. No, I absolutely.
But no, where I was going with this was that you have a really great vibe.
Yes.
And what I guess the sad thing about it, Susan and I was talking about that during the break, was what a cool vibe you got. I mean, you bring a great positive. Yeah, we were. But I'm telling you right now what we just talked about.
Okay, great.
Was that the great positive energy you have? You got a great energy. As soon as you walked in, I'm like, I like this person. I mean, the minute you walked up my driveway, I'm like, hey, and we introduced you. I loved your, hey, I'm Mark Basie. No, you got a great energy, and I think that anyone in the Cincinnati, Hamilton County area should reach out to you, especially if you're a cop down there. We love our CPD. This is podcasting at its best here. That's the attack dog has seen a squirrel, Mr. White, we call him, because we have albino squirrels.
She's just plugging for me.
Right.
That's dog language for she's just repeating what you're saying. For the canines.
Maggie's into it, yes.
For the canines.
Yeah, you canine handlers. But anyway, all first responders, and that's kind of the thing with our show, is that season 1 was like going to therapy. A lot of people, like you were talking about, we got the big padded couch, and it's like no interaction, and let's talk about a child. Isn't that at all? My first session with David, I waited 5 minutes before he said fuck the first time. I'm like, I dig this dude. He's got great energy and a great vibe about him. But like with you, I mean, I figured first responders down there should be beating the path to your door, because you got to flush the toilet. That's what I loved about the last episode. You're talking about people disconnected their toilets, so you're not flushing it anymore. And we flush the toilet by simply getting a goddamn good night's sleep, boys and girls. Because, it's clinically proven, or it's chemically proven, right? To get those chemicals out.
Oh, yeah.
The more you rest, I mean, I don't know the technology or the
you're doing fine.
Clinical term.
Right.
But, the more you sleep, the more you get those toxins out, and that's the simple thing.
Well, it's it's the way to process all the shit that happened through the day and before. Right. That's when you're processing. So
right,
and to get that out. The sad thing about it, I'm 3 years outside the job. 3 years, I still dream cop. Had a cop dream last night.
Tell me about it.
Very good.
Since you asked,
the next morning.
It's always fight dreams, man. It's always fight dreams. Don't know why. I'm surprised I don't beat the shit out of Susan that night. So, but it's always it's always a struggle dream. It's kind of like a 2 on. I've had those. And I don't know of any cop out there that's hasn't had them. If you haven't had them, is that either number 1, you're not a hard charger, or number 2, it's coming.
Right.
So train.
Or the dream where the gun doesn't shoot. That one's a common one too.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's why I'm still alive today, is because the gun didn't go off. I had a traumatic
I mean, like
incident.
the dreams about they're in a altercation.
Yeah, they're fighting and they're going to kill the guy, and the gun doesn't go.
Yeah. Something weird happens with it. Something really, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's that fear of, oh, fuck, what do I do now? Yeah, drop the gun.
Helplessness, complete helplessness.
Go to knives. Have a contingency, boys and girls. This is number one. We talked about. I'm going to just take us down a different path. In the last episode, we were talking about the things, and I want to go back to the 4 F's. David's been preaching the 4 F's. Family, faith, friends, favorite activities, and those are the things we talk about that a lot of cops stop doing. I had a colleague the other day, and it just takes so much energy to speak with him because he's just so dark. And I feel him, I feel like my energy level gets drained off when I speak with them. But, and I asked him, I said, when was the last time you really had a good belly laugh? You got I don't know. Yeah, there's your first step, bro. Come on, man. Get back into therapy and start working on this, because some people don't think that it's possible.
Right.
But go today, do the work, get into the shit. Your future self is going to thank you.
Right.
There's so much other, like I said, very complex. It's complicated, and that thinking brain, though, right? The distortions that can happen with a depressed brain or an anxious brain or a traumatized brain. I mean, we know the scans show us very clearly all the different parts of the brain that literally change in terms of being exposed to all this. And so kind of understanding a little bit. And I do a lot of psychoeducation. And man, even though for me it's like, just the kind of the dog and I have a whiteboard and I get up there like a teacher. I'm like doing all kinds of stuff.
Do you do any brain scans?
No. Do I? No.
Well, no, I didn't know if you did with your practice, because when we interviewed Women Wellness, when they go there for
that's
treatment,
awesome.
That's the first thing they do is scan
that's
them.
Awesome.
And if they're not home doing their work when they do outpatient, and they come in and it's not a change, well, you're not doing your work, bro. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Is your brain physically changes.
Physically. That's what, physically changes. And then you got to look at and understand a little bit about some of the things that might be going on from that. And then, of course, the adrenaline. Well, so distorted thinking is one. That's a big one. Distorted thinking, constricted thinking. And these all going to play into then how that person emotionally is feeling, and then behaviorally what's going to happen. So when you talk about someone being just so, negative and draining, and just the dialogue that you hear, well, imagine what is going on in the internal dialogue. I mean, it's all shit.
Yeah.
And part of that's just the See,
Maggie's in here in the studio.
Maggie's like, I don't want to talk about all that. Right. It's so sad.
She's like, let's throw the ball. What are you doing?
But so distorted thinking is gonna, put someone in a place of not being really factual, not being able to really assess the situation in a factual way. It's going to be distorted. So it's going to be things like life sucks, people suck, which, well, people kind of do suck. Yeah, life sucks, people suck, I suck. And then they just kind of go through that spiral, and that distorted thinking's playing into that. And then you have the helplessness and kind of the hopelessness about that. Like, then that gets into, it's never going to be better. It's always going to be like that. That's distorted thinking, because there's no always or never, right? And then you got constricted thinking, and that plays a lot into the suicidal ideation and suicidal people that die by suicide, that attempt, so that constricted thinking really plays into that as well. And so constricted thinking, I don't know if you've talked about it before.
No, roll.
Yeah. But, that's that all or nothing, black or white. And that is a very, military, first responder, law enforcement world. There's no gray.
Right.
There's no, it's this or it's this. We don't have room for this. Well, that's a problem when you're, you're thinking about all the pain and suffering that you're feeling. And in your constricted and distorted brain, my family be better off without me. There's no hope. It's never going to get better. And I either have to live with this pain and awful feeling for the rest of my life, or I could just kill myself and spare my family the pain of me and what a miserable bastard I am.
Very good.
Like, that is the thinking.
Right.
No, I've lived that life.
So it's but that thinking brain, it's not even it's part of the thoughts that are coming in that way,
Right.
is from the depression, from the anxiety, from the trauma, from it's all of that changes not only the structure, but the thinking to it. And I know you've talked about this before, and it's like, but then also too, what is that baseline of thinking? What's the baseline anyway before stress and before call after hot call after critical incident after, like, so okay, but then what happened before that? You know, what are those core beliefs that are playing into a very EMDR, right?
Yeah.
You know, because we all have them, and they develop long about, you know, by the time you're 7, for sure, you've got some good ones in there.
Oh, yeah.
By
Right.
7, you know,
yeah.
if not sooner.
Yeah.
And
So
we've
it all
talked-
plays into that.
And we've talked about two paths I want to go down here. How many people that are fucked up that decide they want to be a cop, and why? How much of a trauma load are you bringing into this job that's unresolved trauma before you even start becoming a cop?
Well, it's not even viewed as that.
Yes.
It's not even viewed as that. And I talk, and I think you've talked about this too. You know, what people call trauma, you know, they're talking about these, well, I wasn't sexually abused or physically abused, or, you know, although they may have been, right? But even if that's not their quote unquote trauma, it's all these other things in terms of not feeling psychological or emotionally safe.
Right.
You know, having that instability.
Right.
And then attachment, and which
Yes.
speaks into the safety. And then in terms of like the messages that these little tiny brains are interpreting, and then kind of getting locked in there as a belief, like, oh, I'm a problem. Oh, I'm not good enough. You know,
Right.
based on a tiny human brain trying
Oh,
to
yeah.
make meaning out of, you know, stuff. It's so there's all that plays into it, right?
Well, it's like, parents, think about what you're telling your kids.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
there was 5 years between me and my brothers, and I've been told my entire life I'm a mistake. Because my parents always said, well, you know, we had a little partying one night, you know, and whoops, here you came along.
Yeah, so a
Hey,
tiny,
thanks.
yeah. So how might someone interpret that, right?
You know,
and a
and-
tiny
and-
brain, not an
right.
adult brain, a tiny brain trying to that's developing.
Right. Well, but then I was kind of like, well, that's why they don't do anything with me, or that's why they leave me here. And that's, you know, I spend a lot of time. So I told them, Susan, you know, I thrive very well alone. I think. I don't, but I like to tell myself that. But, you know, growing up as a young man and as a teenager, I did very few social things. And, you know, I wanted to go into the military. When I was graduating high school, my dad talked to me, well, what do you want to do that for? Because I want to be bigger than what I want to do, something more than what I am. I had this servant heart, you know, and I wanted to do something else. So, and then we had a restaurant down in North Dixie, and all the deputies would come in. They're like, hey, man, why don't you come out and ride around with us? I'm like, that's cool. And then cops came on. I'm like, how do I do that fucking job? If they're getting paid to do that, that's what I want to do. You know, the reality show when it first came on back in the day.
Well, and then the meaning that had to you, the meaning it had for you. There was a meaning there. You know,
Right. Well, you know, those guys were respected when they came in, and you know, the high sheriff himself, Tom Wilson, used to come in, and just what a great guy that guy was. And he was kind to everybody, and you know, people would bug him while he was sitting there with his command staff trying to have lunch, but he always took the time to speak to people. Or he'd tell the guy, hey, I can't talk to you right now. We're kind of in a lunch meeting, but it'd be all right. Could I talk to you here in a minute? Oh, well, sure. And they go sit down, and he always made his way around the restaurant before he ever left to be sure he reached out and talked to those folks because he gave a shit.
Nice.
But no, that was the meaning. You know, I'm thinking, man, I could do this. This is what I want to do. So then, you know, having that push forward or having the tenacity to get there and not realize what you're setting yourself up for getting into this career. Is Maggie over there looking at your feet? Go ahead and bring her on up. Put her on the microphone with you. But, you know, getting into that, and then the other side of it is dealing with the traumas that you're having on the job. You know, what's the load you're bringing in? Then how well are you managing them once you're there?
Right.
You know, how are you taking it out on your family? Because, you know, David said many times he's had first responders that just go home and just fucking shut out. And that was me for a long time, you know, just go home and shut down.
Yeah, and part of that's part of the crash too, from the hypervigilance and the the alertness all day,
Right.
all that Gilmartin work. So it's again, there's a lot to it.
Right.
There's a lot to it.
I'm wondering, like, if I'm a law enforcement person and I've gone through therapy, or not, either way.
Yeah.
But, like, if there's somebody, and one of my other fellow officers are having a hard time, how would I know that?
Well, the biggest thing is change in
behavior
behavior.
change.
Talk about that a little bit.
So, behavior change is looking at, wow, so Mark used to be, this is not Mark, I'm just, he's sitting here. So, Mark used to be kind of coming to the functions and around and would say hi when he passed by and smile and tell a joke and, noticing that hasn't been really doing that lately. And he seems a little irritable and kind of, not his self.
Yeah, like disconnected.
And everyone can have a bad day, bad
Right.
couple days, a bad week,
Right.
But if it's kind of going on and there seems to be this really sort of change in personality almost, like, gosh, that's just not who they are. That's not how I know them. It's not how I'm used to experiencing them.
Very good.
And our body and us are good barometers. So if we're noticing we're having a different reaction or feeling when we're around someone that we didn't used to have that feeling, that's a good indicator too. And you don't necessarily need to have it. There's so many. Listen, you go out there. There's all the list. Look for this. Look for that. All these lists, and that's good. And we want to educate and continue because we've got to keep talking about what the things to look for.
Right.
But I tell people all the time, like, listen, if just something seems off, just go with that. Go with your gut. Check in with the person. Just say, hey, I don't know. He just seems a little different lately. What's up, man? What's going on?
Are you okay?
Yeah. Or
I'm
not even,
fine.
or not even. Well, I was gonna say, not even asking, "Are you okay?" I like more of the, "Hey, tell me what's up. What's going on? What's happening?" You just seem, or just say, or a lot of times, just stating what you're noticing, and then that's it, and let them fill in. It's more of a statement. It's not a question. Not
Very
how
good.
are you? Are
Right.
you okay? Because
Right.
that allows them to say, "I'm fine."
Yeah. Which is the
Yeah,
standard response.
Which is the standard
Yeah.
response versus, hey, I've noticed just not quite yourself. It just feels different.
Yeah.
And period. And let them, and just stare at them, not stare at them like stare them down. But like what I mean by that is don't fill in the space anymore
Right.
with any other, definitely don't ask them a barrage of questions. Keep it simple, and just kind of let them know what you noticed and let them fill it in.
Well, and I can tell you the people that got on the wrong path, like when I was out here, they put a gag order. You shall not talk to or converse with or communicate with. Because if you do, we'll fire you, is what they told me. Or not what they told me, what they told the rest of the staff there in my former agency, which is horseshit. So everybody's like, fuck you. So suddenly their wives or, kids' phones were calling me, hey, man, we're just checking in. Don't want to talk about it. I just want to make sure you're okay. I was walking out of Kroger's one night. One of my officers rolled up. He's like, hey, Sarge. And I'm like, dude, they're going to fire you if they find out we're talking. He's like, they can go fuck themselves if that's what they want to do. I mean, you're an employee, and what they're asking of us is not reasonable. I just want to make sure you're okay. And that meant a lot, especially for those of us that, and like I said on our last episode, if you're going into the IA meeting, the internal affairs meeting, some people are dead men walking and don't realize it. They don't realize that where that's going. But having that check in, reach out, or you don't have to ask them, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
Hey, man, just hey, I haven't heard from you in a little bit, buddy. Hope you're fine.
Yeah.
Things like that, and that's where I'm kind of going with that. Is be sure you check
Well,
in.
do you
with one
mind
of
if
them.
I
Sure
respond to that?
Please
And
do.
only to have some just, again, I think people, sometimes things that we say, we're telling them how to respond back.
Oh,
So if we're saying something like, hey, just want to make sure you're fine. I mean, you're literally even nodding your head. You're literally going, please tell me you're fine, because I really can't fucking handle it.
Exactly right.
that's a great perspective.
Yes.
That's a great perspective. I love
so
that.
I really encourage more than just, hey, I'm concerned about you, period.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Statements, not questions.
Not questions.
You're not exploring. This isn't an investigation.
No.
Statement of concern.
And I think even if all you got out was to state what you're observing,
Mm-hmm.
versus, you know, again, people tend to, who don't know, not, you know, don't maybe have the clinical background, right?
Right.
They want to fill in and say these things where they mean well, you know, just like, you know, we've been talking about suicide. You know, people want to give the laundry list of reasons why someone should live in a moment. You know, what about your kids and you got your family and you got this and you got that, and it's like people don't realize that actually might be the stressors, or that might be, you know, you're literally telling them you shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
So, you know, but people don't realize they mean well. So,
You're right.
so, yeah, just wanted to.
What about family members? What about,
Hang on.
you know,
There you go. I had you muted when you went to get the dog.
oh,
See how
You said, what about family members?
what about family members? You know, you're talking about how do you approach someone at work? You know, how does that spouse approach?
I think the
them?
same way. I think the same way. In terms
But I think
of,
that it
I mean, to
you're
start,
gonna get
to start.
you're gonna get even a less response than they would give their coworker when their spouse is saying.
I think
noticing-
presentation is huge.
Yes.
So some spouses or you know, other family members, they might be saying the words that would be helpful, but maybe the tone or their energy might be one of anger or panic or, you know, distress themselves and upset. And so, and even just upset, that, again, understandable,
Right.
but not realizing that even the tone or a facial expression could be sending a message. I can't. This is what this is doing to me.
Yes.
And so that person, just on a face, right, could maybe not respond or shut down, and we're not ever blaming. We're just saying these are the possibilities.
Right.
And again, you know, another reason to try to get other people enlisted and support and help, and, you know, never try to do, you know, whether it's a spouse or whoever, it's get a couple people, you know, and I don't mean like a, what's that called? That's my 53-year-old brain. Thank you.
Intervention.
I'm not talking about an intervention. I'm just saying, like, you know, and not give up, you know, keep at it. But it's difficult because even in those situations, sometimes person's not ready.
Right.
You know, they're just a lot of things to consider. And
That's a really good point about the facial expression. I've had probably 4 of these in the last month, let's say. I can just tell. The statement is, I can just tell. When I walk in the door, your facial expression tells me everything I need to know.
right.
And it's like, so you don't dialogue? I mean, it's just like, go straight to, I know the story. And it's like, yeah, you might be right, but you don't really know until you verbally engage somebody. And I love your point on noticing behavior and sharing statements of concern rather than asking questions and looking for answers to questions that aren't really your business in the first place.
Or maybe they can't even answer.
That's right.
They don't know.
Or they have a stock answer like, I'm fine, don't worry about it.
I'm okay. Yeah.
But yeah, noticing, paying attention to each other, that's part of loving, part of serving as a part of a group, a department of law enforcement, fire, whatever. Notice each other.
That's what I push. I'm a CIT trainer as well, and when I'm doing the suicide prevention, the officer wellness, you know, that, like I said, I talk to them and I say, look, you all need to do this for one another. You know?
Yes. Yeah.
Can't, like I said, you can't wait for somebody else.
No. No.
You all have to take care of each other,
Right.
and this is how you do it.
Right.
And slowly and eventually we can, at some point, you know, the culture can shift. But, you know.
If having that change come from underneath instead of on top
Well,
is
it's not
very
going
much
to come from top.
yeah, and that's very
not
much
a thing.
Mark's point. And I think all of our experience has been that we just can't count on leadership to do shit. That if we're going to create a new culture, we're going to have to do it from up, down to up.
Yeah, it's got to be a grassroots
Right,
from the
exactly.
bottom up, and that's where I was talking about. Where were all these Blue Helps and Irish Angel and all these people that are getting lots of federal funding, and what the fuck are they doing with it? Blue Help's now First Help. Well, they report on the officer suicides. I don't know how they're collecting their data, but.
Well, that's a whole other thing. You're not going to get accurate data anyway. I mean,
No.
you know that. So
No,
just
and it's
whatever
like-
data you see, just you're going to add. There's going to be addition to that, obviously.
And we had our heart broken back in November. Our neighbor in Florida is retired law enforcement. Took his own life.
So sorry.
We were devastated. We're like,
Well, of course
"Fuck
you
Wally."
were.
And he'd go out in the backyard, always a happy guy. Hey, Wally, how you doing? I've never had a bad day. He just always upbeat and just great dude. And I was like, son of a bitch. It's like, what the heck's going on here? And then the neighbors come over and said, well, yeah. And they're not tracking post-career suicides.
Right.
Or, like during the day, and David learned, an earlier episode we talked about, well, he was cleaning his gun. Nobody fucking cleans her gun and has it go off. That's bullshit. But it's the guys trying to give this person some dignity because he,
Right.
he killed himself, or he or she.
Right.
So that again, we need to get to the officers at the grassroots. They need to be able to feel free to come out and reach out to a therapist, and it should be easy. I love the way you were talking about. It needs to be easy.
It needs to be
Absolutely.
easy, yeah.
I
Right,
shouldn't
don't
have
make it difficult.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to go through. It's tough enough. Like with David, when I first called him, he said, "I can see you in about 3 weeks." Fuck, man. I had a gun in my mouth today. I need to see you today. That's why we talk about get in now. Get on someone's books now for when it happens. And then I got officers that's like, oh, man, I did 30 years and I'm all right.
Well,
Okay, good for you, bro.
And guess what? And I bet you can attest to this, is how many times does that relationship come into the session?
Yes, exactly.
So it's
You
really
mean the relationship of
the relationship with the other person, whoever the other person is.
Oh, okay.
Meaning like relationship conflict, relationship
Oh.
stress.
got it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's not just about this, these critical incidents or this trauma. I mean, yes, of course, that's part of it.
Right.
Guess what else is a big part of that? The relationship
Yes.
issues and conflict.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty big.
And then it becomes very complicating.
Yeah.
And then we've talked much about how many folks with unresolved trauma end up with
Oh, yeah.
process addictions. And then you've got
Oh.
alcohol, drugs,
Okay.
gambling,
That's
porn, and then you've
Yes.
added layer upon
Right.
layer
Right.
to the whole need for treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that you're schooled in, my dear, that knocked me out was you're trained in level 1 and level 2 of the Gottman
The
method.
Gottmans, yeah.
And I've got enough awareness of that to know if I started out today, that might be all I do.
Oh, yeah.
Gottman method is the
Yeah.
shit to me.
I think I tell my supervisees, I think everybody who does any kind of couple work should at least have the foundation of the
Yes.
Gottmans, only because
Yes.
the research, decades and decades of
Oh,
all this research. And I'm
fantastic.
also a huge fan of Sue Johnson, who recently passed. She did emotion focused therapy, and I'm a big proponent of that because that's all about that attunement and attachment and
Yeah.
and all that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I do that work.
And for those listening, the Gottman method is a very, very research-based
Very.
model for doing marital therapy
Yeah.
with couples.
Couple therapy.
And as Melanie is saying, and those of us at the table have all experienced, marriages get fucked up.
Relationships.
Yeah,
You don't have to be married.
relationships.
You don't have to be married to be fucked up in a relationship.
That's
I was
right.
just
I
going
can
to say.
attest to that.
I was just going to say the same guy that told Mark, "Oh, I'm okay. I've been a cop for 30 years. I'm just fine." Probably has a side chick.
Yeah. Or like me,
So,
you're 50
not
pounds overweight
fun.
because my processed addiction is food right now.
Right.
You know, what other addictions are out there? And that's what we talk about. How are you compensating for this? You know, what are you doing? You know, if you're not going to therapy and you're not
Something's
you
happening.
don't have that good life balance. You know, you're not unplugging. What are you doing? And David just went down the quick list. You know, and the more I've done this show, the bigger list of addictions. Working out. I didn't realize working out was a fucking addiction.
In itself is a hyper aroused
Yes.
reaction response to threat and stress.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
so anything up there
Yeah.
could be cleaning.
Could be cleaning.
Could be cleaning.
Absolutely.
But yes,
Yeah.
working out, cleaning, anything that's in that hyper aroused attempt to get into to homeostasis. You know, and so much is up in hyper aroused that people don't realize recognize, like you're saying, like working out, like
Yeah, you got the guy that's just, you know, fucking ripped diesel. And it's like, Jesus, dude. But, you know, they're at the gym 4 hours for every day. Or,
Right.
you know, we was talking about some guys that are getting up. Their shift starts at 6 a.m., so they're up at 3:30.
because it's easier to be at the gym for 4 hours than be home.
Yes.
Right.
How many minutes did you spend with your kids today? Well, I was at the gym. How many minutes did you spend with your wife? Oh, I was at the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's easier.
It's easier. Yeah. And I can,
Like shopping, like sex, like porn, like gambling, like eating, like, you know.
right. The list goes on.
Peanut butter chocolate Haagen-Dazs is mine. I'm not kidding.
That's a good choice, my dear. Well, are we good with time, or is it about time?
That we could talk.
Yeah, we could do this for
You need
days.
to come back. No, you need to come back. But I think we're almost an hour. We haven't
Okay.
even scratched the surface.
So I want to get
No,
you
go,
some
David.
food.
We have time.
So no, let's
roll.
let's say thank you.
Yeah, you're
And the intent is very clear. We want to have you back.
Oh, that'd be great.
And we want to make sure that our community of listeners knows Melanie Palmer, Mason, Ohio,
There you go.
marriage and family therapist, first responder specialty,
Yes.
connected to numerous credentials and expertise. She is an excellent resource for our entire region. So please come back again. Thank you very much for being here. It's been an absolute joy to be with you.
Same. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Donnie, cue the music.
Key the music, buddy.
May your days and nights find you strong and safe. May you take your place as your family's face. As you do the shit that we won't do. As you embrace the risk you must go through. May you grow in strength and heal and find your heart, your soul, and your mind. You look at your life and grin. You have a home, the shield within.